like our internal laboratory. We've tried this experiment many times over 30 years, in which what should be done in our internal office, we decide to make public so that my wonderful team understands the difference between internal drafting and external accountability. So in a way, आप imagine कीजिए कि आप हमारे ऑफिस में ही बैठे हो, and we are experimenting with you on a new format, which is not necessarily, there's not great tamasha or excitement, but there is a certain intellectual dialogue and stimulation of the mind and soul, which hopefully will remain with you for some time. Basically, today, we start our celebration of the creativity and cinema of Mahesh Bhatt, genuinely fine, unique, original thinker, a man who has brought a very unique way of creating cinema. It's a unique life also. And him and his family, Soni Razdan Bhatt and Pooja Bhatt, today will talk about with me on the nature of the Indian modern family, which is imperative as one of the research categories of the changing smile of childhood. We'll start with introducing you to what is my 30-year work and the work of my team. And in the next few weeks and months, it will hopefully help to change our educational systems, our knowledge bases, and most importantly, the way the public can access the highest forms of knowledge free and imbibe a certain confidence, a sense of inner security, and the politics of education, which have divided our country to a very large extent. Har maa baap, the single greatest objective has been to give their children the best education. And we've seen that over 80 years, how slowly the idealism, the confidence, the sense of pride in having a great education slowly dwindles. And a cynicism set in. It's been there for 40, 50 years maybe. And then suddenly what happens is you lose faith in the idealism, you lose faith in the ability of knowledge to give you a fair life, and therefore all educational systems, all learning processes are on the back foot. And then you have further dilemmas such as technology changes, and they bring their own attitudes towards learning, which are fundamentally different to the way the mind evolves and the mind wishes to go deeper into whatever questions it must have. So what I will share this evening is 2 pages. We are launching for the first time Mahesh's agraphy page and Anupam's agraphy page, Anupam Kher. Just go to the browse all, the Indian, just quickly so that those who have never seen this before. This is in a way the first attempt anywhere in the world to conceptualize India studies. Imagine 32,000 institutions in the world of education, and we do not have one undergraduate degree on India studies. Across the world, within India, there is no university, no college which is teaching you what is contemporary India studies. And then we expect a certain relationship with the rest of the world. For 30 years, I have built with my team, small team, dedicated diehards, Excel sheet on Excel sheet, no artificial intelligence, no great technologies, but to put together the single greatest knowledge base that the world's ever seen on India through her arts, social sciences, and humanities essentially. And cinema as a critical educational resource is the first research category of 16 which conceptualizes the structure for India studies. Followed by the modern and contemporary fine arts, the photography within India, the printed image, popular arts and crafts, the architectural heritage of India and its inspiration, the economics of art and cultural industry, the automobile, transport and travel heritage of India, the nature of uncertainty as we understand through horror, magic, sci-fi and gambling, the social responsibility of the creative mind, the changing smile of childhood and its second coming. That's the focus of today's panel discussion, that hamara jo bachpan hai, those formative years of evolution of the mind. Most people say that by the age of 7, 96%, 97% of your mind has been already formulated, and the rest is working on that base. The next is a sensual discipline within creativity, the history and historiography of scholarship in the arts, social justice and political integrity, India's relationship with the world, our religious, spiritual, poetic, philosophical frameworks, and the animal-human nature continuum, basically focusing on all the ecological, environmental, animal welfare aspects of our daily life. These 16 together make up the structure. Go to Mahesh's page, please. Just type, or let's type with Anupam because he's not here. Let's do him. So Anupam Kher, for example, this is what we call an agraphy page. It's like a mini PhD, but it is visually driven. Remember, the essence of this site is that the visual drives the knowledge. India is visually a deeply illiterate country. She has never taken seriously the visual vocabulary as a source of knowledge. The written word, the text, is what dominates our concept of knowledge. So this website is a jugalbandi between the visual and the textual, and we'll be adding the audio by March, April. And that's the essence for great learning, when all three work together. The visual, the textual, the audio, and then the excitement will return to classrooms. A certain openness of the mind will emerge for learning, and the joy is an essential nature of that critical part of our life. We have introduction, we have a research center, we have a body of work, and we have an integrated timeline. Go to the archive, please, beta. The archive, for the first time, you will have every document ever produced, every photograph, every poster, every show card, every booklet, every magazine, every journal, every book, anything on Anupam Kher, just keep on scrolling up and down a bit, or down, will be available to you free. Anyone, anywhere in the world can access it. Just click on one of the images. You can, when you go into the image, you open up a whole world. You've had to choose something. Click on Prabjot Ben. That's why one of the reasons is, to make Prabjot more accountable for public scrutiny. When she's in office, whatever. Have you opened something? Which one, beta? Saaransh? All right. Now from here, you click on, let's say, Mahesh Bhatt. In 5 seconds. So what happens here, for the first time, we are integrating India across 16 major research categories. So for example, let's type MF Hussain for a minute in the search box. Now, wherever you move, you can go immediately. All I'm showing you at the moment is the basement. And just click on integrated timeline. So year by year, month by month, if you want to understand the life and times of MF Hussain, you have access to it. Go to the archive, and this is at the highest level of knowledge. Everything is credited, everything is cross-referred. For the first time, you can see every artwork. Scroll down, every painting, every drawing, everything he's ever done in his life, and so on. Let's come back to Mahesh's page, please. So what you will have available in the next few weeks and days, it's already public, but we still have So many things we have to sort out. Let's come to a research center archive. So as you can see, step by step, there are so many things that are still pending, still need to be added. That's a continuous journey. In a way, Wikipedia has over 100,000 people every day feeding information. I essentially built this with myself and, to begin with, 3 other people. And it's just the body of work that has allowed us to move. And obviously, we had to buy so much in the world. To document it, one had to buy the originals, whether they be paintings or photographs or posters. Click on one image, beta. And so you're getting the first level. This is the first level of the knowledge base. Everything is based on an object. It's not about opinions. It's not about ideas first. That's the objectivity of this site, that whatever India has created, all the objects that she's created, paintings, drawings, posters, monuments, cars, books, journals, catalogs, textiles, films, that's the basis on which the knowledge is built. So there's no agenda. It's to give the most objective, comprehensive understanding of India, and then you bring your ideation. Let's just go out of this for a second and go to the integrated timeline. Integrated timeline, better. Now, this section, obviously we were thinking twice whether to put so much content. In total, we will be having nearly by June, about 7 million pages. By the end of the year, about 9.8, let's say around about 10 million pages. That's a huge amount of work. Some of it now slowly will start getting automated by the energy of the mind of the website itself. But most of it, 99% at the moment, we feed. So if you move forward, just move forward. So step by step, if you wish to understand the creativity of Mahesh and his cinematic journey, we give you that option. At the moment, the clicks on the words are not there. That will come in the next few weeks, so that what would take years and years of study across institutions is now at your fingertips. The question is how we use this, and that's for another occasion. So that was simply an introduction to what we are sharing and why you all are here. And all these small events that we are doing, some are larger, some are smaller, is to build the content when the audio stage begins, the live events. By March, we will be having all these events live on the website, and hopefully the whole world will be viewing it with a different energy. But the intimacy of starting it out as we are, I think there's an innocence in it, and it's lovely to see people come for something which normally you would not attend. And on that note, let me introduce and bring on stage Soni Razdan Bhatt, Pooja Bhatt, and Mahesh Bhatt. Aye. Today we will be discussing the nature, the changing smile of childhood and its second coming. Basically, it's about the nature of childhood, the relationship between children and their parents, the nature between siblings, and the concept of the Indian family, how it's evolving, how it has changed, different models, different frameworks, and hopefully, given the unique way in which Mahesh Bhatt allowed a certain vulnerability of his own life to be shown on the screen, daringly, boldly. Sometimes maybe the world wasn't ready for certain things. But because this is a very unique, loving, different kind. So, Naine Deva? Sorry, beta, sorry. So, because this is a very different, unique, loving kind of togetherness. At the end of the day, I use family, but the concept is about togetherness. How do we stay together? What is the glue which binds human beings in a world which is getting harsher and harsher, more and more isolated? The biological and the digital are slowly fusing. The ability to forgive and bring compassion as the first instinct is getting harder. The gap between generations is getting larger. The nature of the learning for the young minds and their concentration levels, their memories are radically changing. There's a huge struggle. And at every age, the struggle is the same. Because we live this age, we think it's more. But every age has its unique challenges. So let us begin with Pooja. Pooja, as a daughter who has brought up many times her relationship with her father and other aspects of family, tell me what was the main driving kind of energy which your childhood defined? You know, what was the nature of the togetherness? What was the nature of the dialogue? What was your inner feelings? Was it one of great love and affection, moments of loneliness like all of us? Just try to encapsulate your first 10 years, 11 years as a daughter.
Well, that's a tough one. But I think the first time I saw him as a human being was when we lived in Shivaji Park by the ocean. And my memories are tied to the ocean. And I remember standing in my balcony and being obsessed with the horizon. And those were the days when he would drink a lot. And one day he was on the parapet with Gulshan Arora and some other friends of his, and he looked at me and he said, "What are you staring at?" And I said, "The horizon, I want to go and touch it." And he said, "It doesn't exist, Pooja. It's not there." And I remember one night when he came home inebriated, and we lived in a joint family, so we had one room to ourselves. And he staggered into the balcony to get a shirt to change into, and my mother locked him into the balcony. And my feeling as a child was that, oh my God, my father might just fall over the balcony because he's so inebriated. And my mother looked at me and she said, "No, you can't go and let him in because he has to learn." And I'll never forget that feeling of lying there, torn between wanting to go and rescue my father from that balcony and be loyal to my mother in that sense. And that's when I started looking at him as a human being. And I think he never spoke to me like a child. He always respected my opinion. He looked at me as an individual. In fact, the first letter he ever wrote me, I still have that pasted in my baby book. So I'm a bit of an archivist myself, Neville. And on top of it, he wrote a quote by Swami Vivekananda, and he said, "Be truthful and be fearless, because you are part of divinity and not a sin." And he said, "You've arrived at a time when your father is a struggling individual, and some say your mother brought me luck, but some say you will." So he said, "You are a heartbeat of this unfathomed universe, and you can be whatever you want." And he signed off by saying, "Love, Mahesh, Papa, in brackets, call me what you want." So I think that really defines our relationship.
How old were you then?
When he wrote me the letter when I was born, but this happened when I must have been about 6 years old, because I remember when I was 7, we shifted to Pali Hill, which was the Beverly Hills of the film industry of Bombay, where, you know, all the stars lived. So this was when I was 6. So these are my early memories.
Soni, you're in a way the glue on so many levels. Your relationship with Mahesh is also complex, and it has its own, like all relationships. I don't think there's any relationship which is not complex when you go into it deeply. But what has been for you to keep your individuality alive, for you to keep your motherhood aspirations and duties and obligations alive, and to be in love with a human being and still find the daily joy, most important. You know, what was it that brought you that daily joy which allowed this balance to be harmoniously sustained over so many years?
You know, it's so...
You have to take this.
Press something? It's so funny you should ask me this question, because there was a point in my life. Okay, there were 2 points in my life. The first point was when we got married, and I was known as Mahesh Bhatt's wife. But I was an actress in my own right, and I was a struggling actress, no doubt, but I wanted to be known as myself. So, okay, I was happy to be known as his wife, but it used to... I mean, I used to think I have to fight for who I am, to be known as who I am. I have to fight for that. So I was fighting. I thought I'd reached a point, and then Alia Bhatt grew up, and then I was known as Alia Bhatt's mother. So I've always been either somebody's wife or somebody's mother. However, I have to say, I'm happy to be both these things, and I also am who I am, and I think I'm fiercely who I am. And I think probably that's what's seen me through, because I am very strong.
But what's the joy? For that strength, you need daily joy.
Yeah, I mean, my whole life is joyful. My family is joyful. My children give me immense joy. My husband gives me joy sometimes. So most of the time, he gives me grief, but not that kind of grief, fun grief. Like, now he's become another child, so, okay, theek hai. But yeah, so I have absolutely no complaints.
We all do return to childhood.
Yeah, I know that, but I seem to be too much of a mother. I don't want to be such a huge maternal figure.
What is it that still allows the humor, the sense of continuity, which is away from all of this? There has to be something which is totally away from all this to keep that sanity alive for all of us. Has there been such a thing for you?
Yeah, I mean, it's probably my work. I never stop dreaming. I never stop aspiring. I never stop trying. For example, I'm working on a film I want to direct. I have been for the last many years. But that gives me immense joy. And I will make it one day. Even if I don't make it, I've had so much fun working on it.
Yep.
So these are the things that... I love cooking. I love simple things in life.
Yes.
I love homemaking. I love going for walks on the beach. I love going for my Pilates. So I have a very full life.
Yes.
Absolutely no complaints. It might sound like I'm a very ungrateful person.
No, not at all.
I'm not at all. I really have a lovely life, and I have no complaints at all. And he is part of that wonderful life, because he's a man that is never on one. He's never one line. You know, there's always the graph which is going up and down, and it's actually quite interesting, because you have to deal with that somehow. And then, of course, growing up, kids, that was its own challenge. A lot of the time I was a single parent, because he was very busy working, running 2 households, so he had to work probably doubly hard. And I never grudged him that. But yeah, it was tough at times, because I had 2 children, 2 daughters, and I, for a long time, was doing it single-handedly. But you know what? You don't think about all this when you're doing it. It doesn't...
Just while you're on that point, the concept of daughters.
Yeah.
And it's important. How would Pooja's relationship with you and Alia's relationship with you, what would be the fundamental differences that would separate them? Imagine what would be those differences of relationship for you?
Differences of relationship?
In the sense of what were the bonding reasons? How would you bond with?
You see, with Pooja, I bonded with her through my husband.
Okay.
So that's how and then we've bonded through a common interest we have in a place that we've built farmhouses. So we have spent some time together by default, and also because, of course, she's very close to her father. And that's how I've grown to know her. It wasn't, it was through Mahesh that I have come to know and, really love Pooja a lot. And she's, almost as close to me as anybody. But of course, somebody like Alia and Shaheen, I'm their mother, their biological mother. So I have grown them up myself. And that makes a difference, right? That is a different relationship. Like, I would never dream of wanting to be a mother to Pooja. She has a mother. She doesn't need another one.
Yes.
But my kids are my kids, and I have to be their mother. So that's what I attempt to do. Yeah.
Fair point. Mahesh, from what both the ladies have said, you are able to surprise the woman, whether it be your daughter, your lover, your wife, because of just being yourself. You never, I assume, have not really wavered from that single path that you've been trying to search for yourself, and whatever I have to be true to that journey, I will be. And in that process, you will treat your daughter not necessarily as a daughter, but as you perceive the concept of daughterhood to be. So what has been your greatest kind of, how have you compromised? Because all of us compromise in front of our family members. We compromise with our daughter, we compromise with our lovers, our wife, our children in different ways, so that their joy is privileged, even if something in us is not wanting to be there. So what has been, in your way, the greatest effort you have to put in fatherhood, which you were unable to do originally, but you struggled and got it done? And what would be your greatest struggle with being a husband? First with fatherhood.
You began with the changing, what is the
changing smile of childhood.
The changing smile of childhood, and I was watching you and you were passionately making, trying to make sense to what you are trying to create here. And I floated into a memory of my childhood. And I'll tell you the significance of that. It was dusk. I could smell grass. And the air was magical, and there were glowworms there. Jugnu. And I had a small bottle in my hand. And I was catching them and putting them in that glass bottle. And there was, at the distance, was my home in Chembur, Mumbai. My mother was seated on an armchair, and she was breathing with great discomfort, and she seemed melancholic. There was, as you said, you pick up, you comprehend life through images. And I understood that she was in great grief. She was a single mother. So something hit me. And I remember tiptoeing to her, and she had long flowing hair. And she was a gorgeously beautiful woman. And what did I do? I picked up the handful of glowworms and I put them in her hair. And then I stepped back and I got a glimpse of a woman with stars in her hair. And that was the most delightful sight. And then she felt that glowworm travel to her neck, and she did this, and she said, "What?" And she looked at me, and she smiled. Neville, for me, that memory has been etched in my consciousness. My intent was to make her smile. And I used the elements that were available to me from nature as a child. Now that is creativity, according to me. It rises from compassion. It rises from empathy. It rises from the urge to touch another human being. In this case, she was the womb from where I was born from. So I was tutored by grief. I remember when we were shooting for Saaransh and Soni was there. We had not married. And we were shooting in the same house where I lived and I lived my formative years, the first 10 years. And I said, Soni, I don't have one single pleasant memory of my childhood. Not painful, but there was a grief. And since we are on the topic of the changing smile of the Indian family, there are 3 incidents I want to tell you more, and I'll sum up, I have nothing more to say. Because unless I speak from my life, I can't talk.
Sure.
One is this, bringing the smile to my mother's face. The second was, she was 8 years old and we were living, and I was going through a difficult time. I had fallen in love with Soni. And I was exploding with conflict. And I wanted to exhale that and tell my child, because I always treated her like an adult. I never spoke down to her. In fact, when I was a little boy and people spoke to me, I used to say, what the hell is wrong with this person? Why is he talking to me this way? I didn't like people talking down to me. So I remember coming into her at the middle of I think it was very late in the night, and I woke her up and I said, I want to talk to you. And she woke up. And I said, look, I want to just tell you something before I speak to your mother. This is something which is that you need to know, because you will hear from outside. And I want you to hear it from my lips. I love you very much, but I'm also in love with another person. And it's nothing to do with things that have not worked out between me and your mother, but that doesn't mean that I'm abandoning you or the house. You will always be my child and I'll always love you. And I remember in Neville, that little child looked at me and smiled. And I remember she spoke to me about this during her podcast, which she does, the Pooja Bhatt show. And when that face came up on the screen of my mind, my heart just broke. Because what I could see in that child's face was the largeness. She was so generous and she was not judgmental at all. She did not judge me. That is another smile I remember. And the third smile I want to talk about is between Soni and Pooja. And Pooja mentioned this to me during a conversation in her show. She said they were both traveling together and they were going to make a film called Love Story. Love Affair, sorry. And they were scouting the location in Coorg, and under a starry sky, one evening when they sat down and everything was divine. Soni reached out and told Pooja, I said, look, I have always carried tremendous guilt for having done what I did, taken your father away, or scarred your childhood. And Pooja said, no, you did not. Something was not right between me and my father and my mother. You did nothing. And she says she smiled. Soni smiled. And I think these are the changing attributes of family. You see, people can't deal with silences, actually. Children can't deal with silences. Can't deal with silences because they understand what's going on. As long as you tell them the truth and there is love there, they can take it. When you weave a false narrative and they ask, you force them to live in a false narrative, then they go through this strange kind of loneliness because they know that the parents are faking. They are not what they are posturing. They see what you do, not what you say. And that's what I discovered. And I think these are the three smiles that just flashed through my head.
Thank you. So, Pooja, thank you, everyone. Given the childhood that you had gone through, because most people implicitly assume they rise above their experiences, but subliminally and unconsciously it enters our thinking. Your life, once you started your independence, how did your relationship with Mahesh and your mother and Soni, how did that sort of affect the way you looked at building your own life and a family? Sorry.
Look, in a certain way, I was independent from the time I was born, I think. I think that he told me something repeatedly. He says, who am I to ask you to lead your life in a way that I have not led myself? But yet, there's an undeniable umbilical cord between me and him. And my mother is quite jealous of that in many ways. But there is a connection. And there is, they say, the Buddhists believe, the Native Americans believe that you choose who you're born to. I chose him. And I do not wish to walk beyond this shadow. I do not wish to disconnect. Why should I? He's my asset. He's my strength. I revel in that shadow, yet I have a great sense of who I am. And there is no, it's not an issue for me in that sense. But I think coming back to what he said earlier, I think that, when he chose to tell me about Soni, I felt valued. A lot of people said, oh my God, you were so young and your father woke you up in the middle of the night and told you. I'm like, yeah. You all had to find out through other sources. Poor you. I found out because my father told me, he trusted me, he valued me. And I think we constantly look at our parents and want them to give us a break. We need to give them a break too. And I think what he said is spot on, that children watch their parents.
Yes, absolutely.
You don't listen to the words, the silences on a dinner table, when there is no love in the home, when there is no respect in the home. Children feel that.
Yes.
When they are not conceived with passion, they look at the world with frightened eyes. I was conceived with great passion. My parents are separated, but that's a matter of geography. The nature of that love is changed. I think he's gone. He's a parent to my mother more than he is an ex-husband to her. And I think what I admire him for greatly is he was not one of those people who met Soni and had an affair. He held her hand, he married her, and she might say that, there's not much that I do, but she's really the glue that holds all of us together. And I don't think she takes credit for that enough. But how did it affect my life? Well, I tried marriage. I tried it. It worked for 10 years. When it didn't work, I said, you got one shot at life. I'm not going to live a lie. So I decided to walk on my own 2 feet because I rewrote my destiny and she lived happily ever after. It did not have to be we lived happily ever after. Am I averse to love? No. But I think that you can't look at it and say, oh, you come from a broken family. My family is not broken. I think our supposed dysfunctionality is far more functional than most people's functionality. You know, we are there for each other, we share with each other, we celebrate each other's frailties and the wretched humanness. And I think that it's a very unique situation in that sense. In fact, Soni and me were laughing about this and said, you know, actually, what are you to me? I hate the term stepmother. So we said, there has to be a better word. So I kind of Googled it, thank God for Google sometimes. And then I came up with this word that I found, which says Oma, which means other mother. Oma. So, you know, I mean...
Well, these are the kind of terms. You know, it's like the word dog. Since the day I came to India, I've really used the word kutta. You know, I live with 400 dogs for 12 years, and I've seen how the use of a word changes people's attitude to something they don't even understand. And same with the concept of the stepchild, or the stepmother, or the stepfather. And it is a Western concept, but they've imposed it on everyone.
Yeah.
But it's our right to recreate it and rebuild it and recalibrate it the way we wish.
Yeah, because I mean, the point is that, you know, one is not interested in anyone's, the society generally wants to box things. And we've never fit into any of those boxes, not as individuals. I think we're all fiercely individual. And even as a whole, we are individual.
Yeah.
So I'm like, call it what you want, but this is my reality. And I think that when I look at my father today, I think that I wish I could be as solid as him, because he is somebody who's extremely responsible, very dependable, and a man of his word, walks his talk, stands with his truth, even if it means him standing alone with the whole world on the other side. And these are qualities that every child longs to have in their parent.
So, Soni, come into that one struggle which virtually every woman in the last 150, 200 years has staken your claim for your individuality and staking your claim for all the other responsibilities imposed by society, mother, wife, etc. At this stage of your life, how do you see that need for staking individuality? Was it really essential, or would it have happened, or would you have wanted to stake it even harder and even more fiercely and aggressively? Because that still is a struggle for millions and millions of women. They don't have the ability to put that out there and take the risk. Where do you stand seeing both sides of the coin?
Yeah, I mean, it's a complex country, and there are so many different levels that women have to negotiate and navigate on, and so many different, places. Because a woman in Bombay might have a easier time of it than a woman in a smaller town. Vice versa, a woman in Bombay might be equally caged, or even worse, more horribly caged if she's stuck in a family which is not allowing her to do what she wants to do or become who she wants to do. And I think this struggle for self-actualization for women is pretty much across the board. It's universal. It doesn't only, it's not only restricted to India. It's everywhere. Yep. And it's not because of men. It's just because of structures, patriarchy, systems, breaking those systems, trying to be yourself, just trying to be somebody who actually gets to do what they want. I mean, a simple example is there is a family, and it's happening today. There's a girl child and there's a boy child. The boy child will always, not always, but a lot of the times gets the money to go abroad to study. The girl does not get it. If there's a choice between a girl and a boy, and because of economics, they give it to the boy. So it's just a very small example, but I'm just saying that women, it's not, restricted to anything. It is everywhere. So that's part of it, I think. It's part of the way our society is evolving. It's part of the way women are evolving and changing. It's part of the way expectations are changing. And what's actually, for me, very heartening is when I see younger men today, I find a lot of them very different to what perhaps my father was, or, maybe in my experience. I find there is a change. And it might be a small change, but I find it very much there. I see it in couples who live in my building, for example, the way they share the childcare, or the way they share the household chores, or whatever they're doing. So I really like that aspect of what's emerging now. And I think that is also allowing women to go out and work and do the things they want to do. And those who can, I think, are extremely lucky. So it is a struggle for self-actualization, and it's not limited to X, Y, or Z. It's there.
Well, before we move to Saaransh, let us see any questions on the nature of togetherness, or the nature of the family, or what has been said on the stage by anyone. Raise your hands, please. Yes, gentleman in the second row.
Thank you. I am SD Saxena. I am a civil servant. I was in the IHC and retired now. And first and foremost, Neville, I thank you very much for organizing this program. It's a great experience of a very prominent family discussing very honestly their relationship. So you deserve a lot of credit. I have one question from Mahesh Bhatt Sahab. Bhatt Sahab, गालिब का एक शेर है जो कहता है कि दर्द का हद से गुजर जाना है दवा होना. Today also you brought tears in my eyes as much as you had tears in your eyes. इतना दर्द है आपकी जिंदगी में, तो क्या दर्द कभी दवा बना, या वो दर्द ही रहेगा, या फिर दवा होगा कभी?
देखिए, दर्द ही दवा है. उससे निजात पाने की कोशिश जो है, आपको अपने बचपन से के गिरफ्त में रखती है. One of the ways of not to growing up is to keep on imagining that there is going to be a state where there will be no pain. No wonder the Buddha said, life is pain, don't ask me why it is so, it is so. ये जैसे मैंने कहा कि I was tutored by grief. और बचपन से ये था, और grief का मतलब नहीं कि I am anti-life or there's no joy in my life. I think grief is one of the heritage of man is grief, is the heritage of man.
Very nature.
And all great art erupts from the womb of grief, suffering. रेत का एक दाना जब एक सीप के अंदर घुस जाता है तो उससे निजात पाने के लिए वो उसको एक मोती में कन्वर्ट करता है. The oyster's intention is not to make a pearl. The oyster's intention is to escape from pain. वो मोती बन जाता है, फिर बाजार उसके दाम लगाती है. So whatever I have created came from my wounds, and thank God that there was suffering in my life, and thank God that I was lucky to meet a man called U.G. Krishnamurti who said that there are no solutions. And the entire grief-averse society, grief-illiterate society, this continuous need to perpetually amuse yourself and entertain yourself is to numb yourself. And that's why Western societies are amusing themselves to death. We are doing the same thing. Yeah.
And we just, for the nature of suffering, it's an ancient, old thought process कि हम सब में suffering है. कोई ऐसी, सब दुखी आत्मा है, सुखी भी है, लेकिन सब में है दुख. जब हम ये दुख समझ लेते हैं कि सब में है, there's a unity, there's a sense of unity between us and all other living souls. As we understand the nature of that unity, we rise above the suffering, because the suffering is also not real, it's perceived. As we rise above the suffering, there is a realization that this is not what it's claiming to be. And in that, a joy emerges, an equanimity emerges.
But that doesn't mean grief goes away.
It doesn't.
The wanting to be free of it is like trying to outrun your shadow. You cannot do it.
Absolutely. That's why the word...
You cannot do it. That's a fairy tale adolescent quest. That's why इंसान बोलते हैं हम लोग बूढ़े हो जाते हैं, बड़े नहीं होते. बड़ा होना ये होता है कि दर्द रहेगा, सुख रहेगा, हंसी रहेगी. It will be a part.
It is part of it. That's why I use the word equanimity. Equanimity means whether you have joy, whether you have grief, both of them bring the same feeling of being alive. Both of them have a certain energy which drives you. The forms may be different, the feelings may be different, but neither of them are in a way real. Neither of them need to be denied. It's like fearlessness. Fearlessness is not getting rid of fear. It's just allowing the fear to be itself. So similarly with grief, there's no need ever to run away or hide or deny it. But it takes a lot of jigger and it takes a lot of love from a lot of people for us to absorb it and transform it into something while letting it come. I tell you, I'll stop at one thing, but I'll tell you something which is very dear to me, which I haven't actually ever shared. When I started my sanctuary for abandoned dogs and cats, I never once imagined that within 10 years, all my children will be dead. Socha bhi nahi tha. I was adopting children, abandoned in the last days of their life. People had given up on them. Tute hue, heart wasn't working, liver wasn't working, legs were cut, blinded, burnt, boiling water. I took them all into my home, every single one. I'm now in the 11th year, and I have seen virtually the bulk of my children die in my own arms, in front of me. But you still have to love. You have to bring in more children. You cannot stop that just because of the grief. The grief powers you through just as the joy that they bring. So on this moment, we move to Saaransh. We have, okay, young lady, I think you are a young lady. I hope you are a young lady. But, well, maybe you're young at heart. Please.
Yeah. Thank you so much for this. I must say I'm a big fan. Pooja, I loved you in Dil Hai Ke Manta Nahi.
Thank you.
I miss that cute little heroine. And Soni, we loved your wicked acting in Bunyad, the aggressive daughter-in-law. And of course, Mahesh, but I don't have to say he's too good a genius. And of course, what you are talking about, Dukh. Nanak Dukhiya Sab Samsar. But I won't talk about Dukh. I want to ask a fun question, Pooja. Since you were given the choice, what do you call him, Papa or Mahesh?
I call him Papa most of the time. Then I call him Pops. And I called him Mr. Bhatt.
Okay, no Mahesh.
No Mahesh.
Take a 2-minute break, and then we will come with Saaransh and its introduction. 5-minute break, everyone.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
Yeah, hi. Okay, so, you know what's always interested me about Saaransh is it was born at a time when there were two very set kinds of films being made. One was the new age parallel cinema which had just come up, the Shah Benegals and the Govind Nihlanis, etc., with Manthan, with Bhumika, with Ankur, and you know it was a very clear-cut kind of cinema. And on the other hand, it was a polar opposite movement happening in the Hindi film industry, where you had the angry young man rising, and you had these huge Bollywood blockbusters and multi-star, cast films. And suddenly, out of nowhere, in this scheme of things, a young man, Mahesh Bhatt, comes up with an idea which is real, raw, serious, about an elderly couple who loses their son, their only son, in a mugging in New York. And what happens to them when a young girl enters their house as a paying guest. And that is the start of the story. What was fascinating always to me was how did this young man think about, A, this subject, and B, he never thought of it as an art film. He thought of it as a film that the masses were going to see. Maybe not the huge masses that were watching blockbusters for sure, but it wasn't in his mind an art film. It was for a mass audience. And that is what he intended to make when he made the film. Not only that, what's also very fascinating was he got Rajshri Productions, who are famous for making sweet, romantic, family dramas, lovely village belles with long plaits and ghadas walking in the village, all that. He got that production house to back a film like Saaransh, which was so unusual and so different, and yet it was so real. And it has its own unique place in history as a result. In those days, I have to tell you that there's a very funny thing about the Hindi film industry. For years and years, films were made without any scripts. And it's funny because today we have a bound script, and every time we make a film, that bound script goes to everybody, and then everybody signs on or whatever, decides. In those days, there were no scripts. There were stories, and there were these narrations which would go on for hours, and you'd get your producer interested and your actors interested, and on the basis of the story. But the script or the scenes were written on set. I mean, I've gone to sets and I've seen the writers writing on set. So what was fascinating about Saaransh for me was also that I was spending a lot of time with Mahesh in those days, and he would narrate the scenes that he was writing for the film. So he was working it all out once he knew that it was going to get made. And he wrote the scenes down on paper with his capital handwriting. He doesn't write in running hand, he writes in capital. So all the scenes were written like that. And finally, at the end of it, we had a file of scenes which we were supposed to do. That was a script. And that was also very, very unusual for that time. And the last thing I want to say about this memory for me was that Saaransh, for all of us who worked on this film, was an experience. It was made with love. It was made with passion. It was not made for money. All the time I spent on the set it became my life. The few hours I went back home to sleep, that wasn't my life. My life was on set. We replicated his Shivaji Park house in Mehboob Studios. We shot on that set. We lived on that set. We breathed on that set. We ate and drank on that set. And that was how the film was made, through tremendous love. You just can't buy that kind of love. Now I would like to hand over the mic to Mr. Bhatt.
Well, I'm looking at the projectionists impatiently wanting to start the film. And, okay, so how do you begin to tell the story of Saaransh? My daughter Shaheen, whom according to me I find she's the most intelligent child we have in our flock, tells me with great awe. She said, I can decipher from what was the source of that particular film, Art or Janam. It came from this particular thing. But Saaransh is, where did you draw it from? I said, I don't know. I think perhaps to explain that is to demystify that is to lose the magic of what is called is a creative force. So I really don't know. But as I was standing here listening to Soni, I remember it was here in Delhi when we brought the film, and it was shown at the Vigyan Bhavan to the members of the parliament. And Anupam Kher and me. Anupam Kher was 28, I was 34. We used to stand outside waiting for the response of the audience. I distinctly remember when the show got over, people came out, and there was the great Amrita Pritamji, the great icon of our nation. She had tears in her eyes and she looked very frail. She was very moved by the film. I could see from her walk. And she was looking for me, and then she asked somebody, and she saw me, and she was quite surprised to see a young man who's 34 who has generated that film. I could see that look in her eyes. And she came and she held my hand and she said, Mahesh ji, मेरी तरफ से, हिंदुस्तान की तरफ से, इंसानियत की तरफ से आपका बहुत बहुत शुक्रिया, आपने ऐसी फिल्म बनाई. She said that, and then she stood in silence, and that silence still echoes in me, because even she ran out of words. And that's what good cinema is. How did we do it? As she rightly said, it came from all great work, significant work, comes from collaboration. We collaborated, each one of us. There are so many scenes that she contributed to the film. She told me to take that perspective to us. It was so refreshing, which was just only a woman could give it. So I would say that Saaransh endures. यहाँ पर weekend survive नहीं करती picture साहब. To survive for more than 46 years now. We are still talking about Saaransh. Anupam Kher says 550 films I have done, Bhatt Sahab. But all my work is reduced to one film, Saaransh, Saaransh, Saaransh. What does it have? It doesn't have my brilliance. It has such. I was just privileged to be at a place in my head where I was picking up tapping into certain collective memory of mankind. And we together, we used to bring it out and just walk on thin ice, and we used to explore. There was a sense of play, there was a sense of discovery, and nowhere was anyone aware that we are out to make a masterpiece. And finally, it was in Moscow, when the film went for the International Film Festival in 1985. I remember it was shown in an audience. International film delegates were there, 4,000 people, and they have huge cinema halls, and there were chandeliers there, and we were made to sit in a balcony there. And Mr. Amitabh Bachchan was one of the delegate leaders. He was sitting behind me, because directors are made to sit in the front. And Mr. Gadgil, who was the Minister of Information and Broadcasting, was sitting down next to me. And the movie got over, and the spotlight came on me, and so I did not know why they were turning the spotlight on me. So Mr. Bachchan tapped me on my back and said, "Get up, they're doing it for you." And I stood up, and I was 35. And they all clapped, 4,000 people. What was it? I don't know. And then I remember he said, "This is your day." And he walked ahead and left me. And the aftertaste of that moment is that next day I met a Soviet Union actress, and I was told that these people do not believe in the concept of life hereafter, God, etc., etc., nothing. And she asked me through an interpreter, do you think anything endures after this? So I said, no, this moment is the only thing that exists. That's the essence of Saaransh. I said, if it had not arrived at that point, that great point where finally Anupam Kher looks at Rohini Hattangadi, oh, okay, I won't give it out, sorry, you'll see the film. And that's the magic you'll see. It ultimately boils down to great grief leads to wisdom. Wisdom comes only after great grief, and love is born only, compassion is born only in hearts which have gone through great grief. So here is Saaransh. 46 years later, I don't know how I did it. Thank you.